Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Ask robtrek, where I answer your questions that you leave in the comments sections. And if you have any questions after this video, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. But today we have one from Omar. Sorry, this is from a month ago, but he says, I have the same camera, and for some reason it's not allowing me to switch to Movie+Photo Mode to Mode 1. Do you know why this may be? And in this video, he was using the EM10 Mark II, I believe. Now, I wasn't able to duplicate exactly the problem you were having the way you described it, but I will tell you that Movie+Photo Mode in Mode 1, there are 3 instances when it doesn't work. Now, for those of you that don't know what Movie+Photo Mode is, it was available in the older Olympus cameras, and basically while you're recording a movie, if you push the shutter button in Mode 1, it'll take a frame from that movie and save it as a JPEG. So you'll get a 16 by 9, 1920 by 1080 JPEG from the movie without interrupting the recording. So while you're recording, you can take as many pictures as you want. It'll just grab those frames and save them as JPEGs. So it's kind of a neat feature. I really liked it when I was using it. Since they don't have it anymore, I haven't been using it much. Also, there's a Mode 2 where it'll actually, when you push the shutter button, it'll stop recording, take a raw image, if that's what you have set in your camera, and then automatically start recording again. And again, it was kind of a neat little feature that I did use time to time when I had those cameras. I still do, but I don't use those cameras as much for video anymore. Now, that said, there are 3 instances where Mode 1 will not work. Okay, even though you have it selected, and I'm going to assume that's what the problem is. And the first instance is you cannot record or take pictures while you're recording a movie if you're recording in 50p or 60p full HD. So you have to change your frame rate down to 30p full HD. If you're in 50 or 60p, you push the shutter button, nothing's going to happen. But in 30p, it will take the picture. It doesn't affect Mode 2. Mode 2 will work either way in any frame rate, but Mode 1 will not. It'll only work at 30p. There's 2 other minor instances where it doesn't work, and I doubt this is the problem, but if you're recording those 4-second clips, which I have a whole video on how to use clips. It's been a long time since I've done that, but you can do 4-second clip movies, and then also you can do fast or slow motion movies in camera. If you're doing either of those 2 things, you cannot use Mode 1 to record or take pictures while you're recording a movie. All right, so let me just show you real quick what we're talking about. If we go into the custom menu and go down here to movie mode, and then scroll down and you'll see Movie+Photo Mode, Mode 1 and Mode 2. So we'll select Mode 1, and let's go into, and I'm in movie mode on my Pen F, and it's the same on the EM10 Mark II. You can see I'm in 1080p, 30p video. So if I push the record button, and then I want to take a picture while I'm recording, I can push the shutter button, and you see on the bottom right, a little box shows up to show you what frame it captured from the movie and saved it as a JPEG. However, let me stop recording. If I change the frame rate to 50 or 60p, and then I start recording, if I push the shutter button, you'll notice that no box pops up, and it's not taking any frames from the movie and saving them as JPEG. So the movie Mode 1 doesn't work unless you're in 30p. And then you have the other modes. This is the slow motion, fast motion settings. Mode 1 is not going to work in this either. And then HD, SD, and high speed, 120 FPS, Mode 1 doesn't work either. So hopefully that answers your question. I think the problem is most likely you're recording in 60p and you just need to go back to 30p, and then Mode 1 will start working again. All right, I have another question here from Pucho Web Solutions, and this was in the video when I was showing you how to take better holiday photos, and I recommended using f5.6. And this is the question is, what is the rationale for 5.6 for Micro Four Thirds? And does flash exposure compensation just change flash duration and not flash power? Or does it change the exposure when taking photos of people wearing white or black clothes. What do you think about using color correction gels like CTO or CTB with the indoor camera flash? And which model flash are you using? Thank you for the informational videos. All right, you're welcome. Wow, there's a lot to unpack here. We'll start with the easy one. Why did I recommend f5.6 when taking pictures of people, say, around the table? And generally speaking, when you're taking pictures of groups, it's recommended to shoot like at f11, right? So that you can get everybody in focus. And that is a full frame or 35mm recommendation. And you can cut that in half when we're talking about micro four thirds, because we have a deeper depth of field with micro four thirds, twice as much as a full frame camera. So you can use f5.6, which is half of 11. All right, the next part is, does flash exposure compensation just change flash duration and not flash power? Okay, there's a lot to unpack in just that little piece, and then I'll move on to the next part. So you can dial in exposure compensation for flash, meaning the camera will measure the exposure, and then you can tell the camera to make the flash 1 stop brighter, 2 stops brighter, etc., or 1 stop darker. And basically what it's doing is it's raising or lowering the power of the flash, right, by 1 stop, give or take. However, the other part of this question is it the flash power or flash duration? Those are really the same thing, okay? Flashes work, and I'm talking about regular flashes, not the like LED flashes, but just regular flashes. The way they adjust power is by the duration of how long the flash stays on. It's very similar to like your shutter speed. The longer your shutter stays open, the brighter the exposure. The longer the light stays on the flash, the brighter the exposure. Now it happens so quickly we really can't see it. So for example, let's just take a standard flash, you know, maybe this Godox V1. I'm just going to pull some generic numbers. I don't know what the exact number is for this. But let's say full power on the Godox V1 might be 1/300th of a second, meaning it's going to turn that bulb on inside and leave it on for 1/300th of a second, then turn it off. And if we want to cut the power in half, let's say we want to do -1 exposure comp. We dial that in the camera, and nothing else has changed, right? Then what it's going to do is to cut the flash power in half, it's only going to fire that flash for 1/600th of a second. So half as long, right? Thereby giving you a 1 stop darker exposure. And then if we cut the power in half again, it's only going to fire at 1/1200th of a second, and so on. Now there's a certain minimum, right? You can't lower the flash powers, and it depends on the flash, more than 1/256th of its original full power output. And it doesn't work like that exactly all the way down the scale, because flashes have, you know, flashes aren't full bright when they turn on, right? They gradually get brighter, then they reach a peak brightness, and then the brightness falls off. So you turn the flash on, and the light goes kind of like this, like in a wave, right? I forget exactly what that's called. There's a technical term for that. But as you make that shorter, right? Let's say you're at like 1/5000th of a second, right, on the flash. That might be like 1/64th power if you're dialing it in manually. The flash will power that little bulb inside for 1/5000th of a second, but it may not reach that peak brightness, right, before the power is cut off again. It may only go up about this high, about halfway, then come down. So flash duration tails off towards the end. I mean, this is probably a little more technical than most people care about, but I just wanted you to try to understand that flash basically is flash duration and flash power are one and the same, and it's controlled by how long that light stays on. All right, the second part of this question is, or does it change the exposure when taking photos of people wearing white or black clothes? All right, the exposure that the camera meters for is independent of the flash exposure compensation. So whatever the camera meters, if you're in like program mode or auto mode or aperture priority mode, whatever the camera meters is going to be independent of the flash, exposure compensation. So if somebody's wearing darker clothes, the camera might, raise the exposure a little bit to get a little brighter image. And if they're wearing brighter clothes, the camera may lower the exposure slightly. But just understand that it's completely independent. And whatever the camera meters, it meters. And then from there, whatever you dialed in for the flash compensation will be relative to what the camera metered. And that's why I like to shoot in full manual when I shoot with flash, so I have complete control over everything, and I don't have to worry about people wearing dark clothes or white clothes, etc. But yeah, those things are independent, so you don't need to worry about that. And then what do you think about using color correction gels like CTO or CTB with indoor on-camera flash? All right, so color correction gels, CTO, CTB. Basically, CTO, I think that stands for color temperature orange, which is kind of like this, which it's got a translucent orange filter. And this is a magnetic one that I can just pop on the front of the flash. And then CTB is color temperature blue, where in which case this would be a blue color, translucent. And the orange ones usually you put on the flash, right? Because you want to match the light output from the flash, which is a very cool, usually 5300K, to match, say, a light bulb, an incandescent light bulb or a tungsten light bulb or a halogen light bulb. Whatever kind of lighting, artificial lighting is in the room that you're in, these gels match the flash, so thereby creating an even white balance throughout the scene. So that when you take a picture, you're not going to have mixed white balances in the same room, because it's very hard to correct in post-processing when white balance is all messed up. Using it that way, though, is typically in a studio situation nowadays. I know some people used to use these kind of gels a lot at events and things when we only had like incandescent lighting and fluorescent lighting. There's like green colored ones for fluorescent lighting. But nowadays, everything is like LED or a mix of LED, fluorescent, incandescent. I mean, everything is all over the place. So it's very difficult, or it doesn't make any sense to use one of these. Just use the camera's white balance. Or if you have a flash powerful enough to overcome all of the other lighting in the room so that this is the main key light source, then this makes sense. But for a little flash like this, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to use these. For like just random events, parties, corporate parties, whatever. The CTBs, color temperature blue, typically you put those on halogen lamps, right? Because they used to use in studios halogen lamps for lighting. And then a lot of people still do, actually. They love the high quality light that you get from halogens. But normally you would put those over the halogen lamps and not on the flash itself, because you're trying to match the artificial lighting of the halogens to the camera flash, so it's kind of an opposite. But I think gels nowadays are used mostly creatively, right? In a studio situation where you want to create different lighting effects, and it's not something I do really, because I'm more of an architectural photographer. I don't do portraits, like fancy portraits and things, but they're used a lot creatively in fashion photography and portrait photography, etc. Now, there is one case that you can use this orange gel, and I'll show you a couple examples, but a lot of time you can use these outdoors when it's sort of cloudy out. You want to use this orange gel, and that'll make the background more blue versus the person's face. Because what you're doing is you set your camera to, say, 3300 Kelvin on the white balance to match whatever the gel is, and a lot of times the gel will be numbered. And it'll tell you exactly what Kelvin it is. But you match the camera's white balance to the gel, and when you take a picture, the person will be in a normal white balance, right? Normal white balance. They'll look like a daylight white balance, but then the background will be very blue. So I'll put up some pictures here. I just went in the backyard and took a few pictures just to kind of demonstrate the difference between using a gel and not using a gel and what the images look like. All right, and the last question was, what flash am I using? And I use the Godox V1 the most, but I also have an 8200, which is probably my most used for my commercial work. And I also have an 8400 that I don't use very much, and a TT350 that I use mostly for my personal stuff. When I go out on photo walks and things for a little bit of light. It's great for like macro work and close-ups and even you know, taking pictures of people. It's a powerful little flash. It's not as powerful as this, but I really like the Godox system, and I will be doing a video on how to use the Godox system, particularly this V1 flash, and the other Godox like the 860 and stuff models have the same features. But they have some really neat features in here that I think people are overlooking that can help you with your exposures. So I'll be doing that, as well as how to use them as radio triggers and things like that. So I hope I was able to answer your questions. If so, maybe consider buying me a coffee or make a small donation so I can keep making these videos. But I really appreciate you watching, and I hope to see you again soon.